There are 3 SeaWorld parks still open in America today: San Diego, Orlando, San Antonio. But there was a 4th, and almost nobody talks about it. It opened in 1970 to 1 million visitors in its very first season. It had shamu, dolphin shows, a water skiing elephant, a killer whale dangling 30 feet in the air above a crowd of over 1,000 people. And then, after 30 years of bringing joy to millions of Ohio families, it was sold, stripped apart, passed from owner to owner, and left to rot. Grass grew through the concrete. Nature climbed the walls. The tanks drained and never refilled. This is the full story of SeaWorld, Ohio. The only SeaWorld park to permanently close. The park that the theme park industry forgot. And the story of what, after 25 years of silence, is finally rising from its ruins. 1. The ocean moves inland. The year is 1964. Southern California is in the middle of a tourism gold rush. A small marine park opens its doors in Mission Bay, San Diego. Not quite a zoo, not quite an aquarium, but something genuinely new. It's called SeaWorld. The idea is deceptively simple. Don't just put fish in tanks, put them on a stage. Let them perform. Give families something they've never experienced before. The park positions itself differently from anything else in the country. Dolphin shows, sea lion performances, handlers in matching uniforms. It works. It works in a way that surprises even its own founders. But the real turning point arrives just 1 year later, in 1965. That's when SeaWorld introduces the attraction that would define the brand for the next 4 decades. A live performance featuring a captured killer whale. Her name is Shamu. Now here's something worth understanding. Orcas had only been captured and held in captivity beginning in 1961. That means in 1965, almost nobody in the entire United States had ever seen a killer whale up close. The show itself was simple. A few basic tricks, a loose storyline about a friendly sea doctor named Dr. Diddle, and a 3-year-old female orca who had been captured from the wild after whalers harpooned and killed her mother. The reaction from the public was anything but simple. Shamu became the icon, the reason people drove for hours, the reason a modest marine park in San Diego turned into a cultural phenomenon. SeaWorld trademarked the Shamu name, recognizing that what they had wasn't just a whale, it was a brand. And with that brand in hand, expansion was inevitable. The park's founders looked east, toward Middle America, toward the families who would never be able to afford a trip to California, but absolutely deserved a world-class experience. The company was looking for a location between Detroit and Pittsburgh. That corridor represented the largest concentration of blue-collar working families in the United States. Northern Ohio looked like the answer. 2. The deal by the lake. Near the small town of Aurora, Ohio, about 30 miles southeast of Cleveland, an old amusement park called Geauga Lake had been running since the 1880s. Established in 1887, it was a classic piece of American leisure history. Roller coasters, carnival games, the smell of funnel cakes on a summer evening. The kind of park that made a childhood. In 1968, Geauga Lake was purchased by a company called Funtime Inc., made up of former executives from nearby Cedar Point. The new owners immediately started looking for ways to grow the park. And that's when they spotted the opportunity on the other side of the lake. They offered SeaWorld a plot of land. The logic was elegant. 2 parks, 1 lake, double the foot traffic. Visitors to one would naturally drift to the other. Neither would need to fight for the same audience. SeaWorld accepted. A 25-acre lease was signed. Construction began in 1968. But the agreement came with a clause, a quiet legal arrangement that nobody thought much about at the time. But that would eventually shape the entire destiny of the park. SeaWorld agreed to a competitive restriction with Geauga Lake. The marine park would not add roller coasters or water rides. In exchange, Geauga Lake would not build animal attractions. At the time, it seemed perfectly reasonable. Shamu didn't need a roller coaster. Shamu was the attraction. 3. 1 million visitors. Year 1. On May 29, 1970, SeaWorld of Ohio opened to the public. Construction had taken nearly 2 years and cost $5.5 million. Past the entrance, guests discovered a park built like a journey from the Midwest into the world's oceans. First came the Seal Show, a comedic, cowboy-themed performance in a smaller arena that would later evolve into a full circus act. Beyond that, a trout fishing pond where guests could catch real rainbow trout and take them home packed on ice. Then the Hawaiian Punch Village, colorful Polynesian tents, tiki aesthetics, a lunch area straight out of late 60s American optimism. Deeper into the park, the Japanese Village, with ornate landscaped gardens, traditional shoji panel doors, a koi pond, and a pearl diving exhibit where real divers demonstrated the centuries-old technique of harvesting pearls from the ocean floor. There was even a small deer park, where kids could hand-feed deer, wandering freely across a paddock. And in its early years, a live alligator exhibit sat near the shoreline. But none of that, not the dolphins, not the deer, not the pearl divers, was why people came. They came for the 4,000-seat stadium overlooking the Shamu tank. Ohio's Shamu in 1970 was a killer whale named Can-Do, one of several orcas captured in the late 1960s who performed under the famous stage name. The show was the same Dr. Diddle routine from San Diego, just in a slightly larger tank. Still cramped, still simple, still enough to stop people in their tracks. In its first 100-day season, the park attracted over 1.1 million visitors, far exceeding initial projections. Double what its founders had predicted. The ocean, it turned out, didn't need to be anywhere near Ohio for Ohioans to fall in love with it. There was one structural limitation from the beginning, however. Ohio's cold winters meant the park could only operate seasonally, and during those winter months, the animals, including the whales, had to be transported back to San Diego. Every year, the park would close, the lake would go quiet, and the staff would wait for spring. 4. Growth. A water-skiing elephant and Kilroy in the sky. The success of year one pushed SeaWorld's owners to expand fast. For the 1971 season, a third stadium was constructed along the Geauga Lake shoreline for a spectacular new water skiing show. Human performers would launch off ramps, soar through the air, and land on the glittering surface of an Ohio lake in front of thousands of screaming fans. The show was produced by entertainer Tommy Bartlett, already a legend for his famous water show in the Wisconsin Dells since the 1950s. The stadium became, at the time, the largest arena for a water stunt show anywhere in the world. At one point in its history, this show featured a water skiing elephant. Let that sink in for a moment. An elephant, on water skis, on a lake in Ohio. But not everything was smooth. During that same off-season, Ohio's Shamu, the whale Can-Do, died in San Diego. Her replacement, an orca named Kilroy, was flown in to headline the 1971 season. During his transfer, in front of a live crowd of 1,200 people, the canvas sling carrying him came loose mid-lift. Kilroy hung in the air, suspended 30 feet off the ground, dangling in front of a stunned crowd of over 1,000 Ohio residents. He was eventually, successfully, lowered into his new tank. He survived, and he went on to headline a new show called Shamu Goes Hollywood. Shamu Goes Hollywood became successful enough that SeaWorld finally built a larger tank in San Diego to match, proof that the Ohio park, in its early years, was actually helping push the entire brand forward. For families in the Cleveland suburbs, a visit to SeaWorld was practically a rite of passage. The park drew visitors from as far away as Chicago and the Mid-Atlantic states, and on a busy summer day, the Shamu Stadium was always packed. People didn't just come once, they came back year after year. The 1970s brought steady expansion. In 1973, the eye-catching Triquarium opened, a stunning indoor display of 3 10,000-gallon tanks housing sharks, tropical fish, and freshwater species, alongside educational exhibits that would anchor the marine life section for decades. In 1976, the entire SeaWorld business was acquired by publishing giant Harcourt Brace Jovanovich for $46 million. The new owners continued the same formula without major disruption. Through the 1970s and into the 1980s, the park kept evolving. A $3.5 million penguin encounter, where guests rode a moving walkway past around 100 penguins in a climate-controlled exhibit. An acrobatic stadium called the Nautilus Theater, rotating Shamu shows with new whales borrowing the same famous name. Meanwhile, SeaWorld's early baby Shamu, a young female orca named Kalina, born in 1985 as the first orca to survive birth in captivity, was sent to SeaWorld, Ohio to boost ticket sales there when she was just 4 years old. A baby killer whale in Aurora, Ohio. The park always found a way to stay relevant. If this story had a Hollywood arc, the 1970s and most of the 1980s would be the golden age. Everything working, everything growing. A little marine park on a lake in Ohio punching well above its weight class. But the end of the 1980s is where the plot begins to shift. 5. Anheuser-Busch and the Claws. That changed everything. In 1988, SeaWorld opened its 4th location, SeaWorld of Texas, on the outskirts of San Antonio. The empire now had a park on each coast and 2 in between. And in 1989, the entire SeaWorld business, all 4 parks plus 2 Florida properties, was sold to brewing giant Anheuser-Busch for a staggering $1.1 billion. Anheuser-Busch already operated the successful Busch Gardens parks in Tampa and Williamsburg. They knew the theme park business, and the moment they looked at their new acquisition, they saw a problem. By the end of the 1980s, the theme park industry had transformed into a multi-billion-dollar world of themed roller coasters, dark rides, and immersive experiences. And SeaWorld was falling behind. Disney and Universal were building experiences that felt like stepping into another dimension. SeaWorld was still primarily a collection of animal shows. Anheuser-Busch decided the entire SeaWorld brand needed to evolve. More rides, more thrills, more reasons for people to choose a SeaWorld over a Universal or a Disney. But in Ohio, that was legally impossible. The non-compete agreement with Geauga Lake had prevented SeaWorld from adding roller coasters or water rides since 1970. Exactly the type of attraction Anheuser-Busch wanted to build. While SeaWorld San Antonio opened a $21 million roller coaster in 1997, Ohio received a 4D pirate movie starring Leslie Nielsen and Eric Idle. While Orlando upgraded its simulator attractions repeatedly, Ohio got animatronic dinosaurs in a walkthrough exhibit that opened briefly in 1992. By the year 2000, SeaWorld Cleveland, also known by then as simply SeaWorld Ohio, had grown to occupy 232 acres. But those 232 acres were still locked out of the one thing that could have saved it. It took until the year 2000, 3 full decades after opening, for SeaWorld Ohio to finally add its first and only ride. Mission: Bermuda Triangle. A motion simulator where guests boarded a submarine to explore marine life in the Bermuda Triangle, only to stumble on a ghost ship and narrowly escape a sudden earthquake. Well-themed, genuinely fun. Also already 8 years out of date, the same attraction had debuted at SeaWorld Orlando in 1992 and had already been replaced there by 1995. Ohio was receiving hand-me-downs while its sister parks got brand new experiences. There was also a human cost in 1996, a serious incident during the water skiing show when a boat that was supposed to splash the grandstand instead lost control entirely and launched into the spectators, injuring 23 people. The kind of event that damages a park's reputation in ways that take years to recover from. The message was becoming clear. Ohio was the least important asset in the SeaWorld portfolio, and there was no realistic path forward. 6. The final season. On October 29, 2000, SeaWorld Ohio closed for the season. It would never reopen under that name. That winter, Anheuser-Busch announced the sale. Six Flags had reached an agreement to purchase SeaWorld Ohio for $110 million. For the first time in 31 years of sharing a lake, the 2 parks would finally become one. Beginning in 2001, the combined parks were renamed Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, covering 750 acres of land. Divided into 3 sections: Wildlife, the former SeaWorld Park; Wild Rides, formerly Geauga Lake; and Wild Slides, a water park area. The 3 killer whales who had been performing in Ohio were transferred to San Diego and San Antonio. An orca named Shuka, on loan from a park in France, eventually headlined a new show called Killer Comeback. The Batman-themed water ski show replaced the original. Pirates 4D, Mission, Bermuda Triangle, The Shark Encounter, the pearl diving exhibit that had been there since opening day in 1970, all carried over into the new era. Attendance jumped to 2.7 million visitors in 2001, the highest numbers the site had ever seen. Six Flags announced a 5-year expansion plan: submarines, a volcano attraction, a rainforest area, even a monorail. The future, briefly, looked exciting, but Six Flags had overexpanded everywhere, not just Ohio. The debts were piling up. Attendance began falling, down 25% from 2001 to 2003, and the combined park never hit the anticipated 3 million visitors mark. Company executives called the wildlife section's performance disappointing. On March 10, 2004, Cedar Fair, owners of nearby Cedar Point, announced the purchase of the entire Six Flags Worlds of Adventure property for $145 million. Cedar Fair stripped away all DC Comics and Looney Tunes branding. The park's ride names were changed due to copyright. Batman, Night Flight became Dominator, Mind Eraser became Head Spin, Superman, Ultimate Escape became Steel Venom. And most critically, Cedar Fair did not retain the animals. The marine life section was shut down entirely, and the animals were relocated to other Six Flags parks. Attendance at Geauga Lake under Cedar Fair's ownership dropped 74%, from 2.7 million in 2001 to just 700,000 in 2004. Without Shamu, without dolphins, without the reason anyone had ever driven to that side of the lake in the first place, the crowds simply stopped coming. 7. The slow death. In late 2004, Cedar Fair announced that the northern section of the former SeaWorld site would be demolished and transformed into a water park called Wildwater Kingdom. The park opened on June 17, 2005, occupying 17 acres of the former marine park site, at a construction cost of $26 million. Thunder Falls, Riptide Run, Liquid Lightning. The Nautilus Theater was demolished and replaced with a kids' splash zone. The old entrance buildings were repurposed as locker rooms and service facilities. But the southern half, where the Triquarium stood, where Shamu had performed, where the Seal Stadium had echoed with applause, was walled off entirely, left empty, left to go quiet. The Shamu Stadium was demolished in early 2006. The site of where it had stood was left as bare ground. And then, on September 21, 2007, Cedar Fair announced that Geauga Lake itself, the entire amusement park side, would not reopen the following season. Dick Kinzel, president and CEO of Cedar Fair, stated that Wildwater Kingdom was the property's most popular attribute, and that a standalone water park was a better fit for the market. Geauga Lake closed permanently. One of Ohio's oldest amusement parks, operating since 1887, over, just like that. Wildwater Kingdom limped on, but the attendance never recovered. The surrounding market was saturated. There was Cedar Point an hour away. There were indoor water parks. There was everything that Wildwater Kingdom wasn't. On August 19, 2016, Cedar Fair announced that Wildwater Kingdom would not reopen for the 2017 season. The water park closed permanently on September 5, 2016, after 11 years of operation. Demolition of the water slides followed in November 2017, and then there was just silence. The old wave pool sat empty. The Triquarium stood sealed and rotting on the shoreline. The Japanese Village building, constructed in 1970, open on day one, sat abandoned behind a fence. The entrance gatehouse pavilions that had welcomed tens of millions of visitors over 5 decades sat frozen in time, weeds growing through the pavement. For several years, the park continued to slowly fade into nature. Trespassing and vandalism became regular occurrences at what had become, as local media put it, an eyesore on the community. 8. The explorers come. When something this large gets abandoned in rural Ohio, it doesn't stay secret for long. Urban explorers began documenting the site around 2018. Former SeaWorld employee Nico Maragos, who had worked as an animal trainer at the park during the mid-1990s, was granted special access to photograph the ruins. Posting on Facebook, Maragos described the experience, walking through what he called a once beautiful marine life park, now transformed into depressing ruins. The images spread across social media and hit people straight in the chest. Drain tanks with rock formations still intact. Pearl diving exhibit walls. The shoji panels of the Japanese village, somehow still standing. The distant shell of the shark encounter building, its paint faded to almost nothing. Drone footage flooded YouTube throughout 2019 and 2020. Aerial views of crumbling grandstands, overgrown pathways, the empty wave pool sitting where stadium seating used to be. And as recently as August 2025, new drone footage confirmed that many of the original SeaWorld-era buildings remain completely untouched. 25 years after the park's last day of operation. 25 years. The slogan of SeaWorld Ohio had once been, "The ocean is closer than you think." Standing outside those rusted gates in 2024, it felt like the ocean had never been further away. 9. The city steps in. But here's where the story takes its final turn. And for once, it's a hopeful one. In 2024, the city of Aurora announced it had purchased Geauga Lake and 48 acres of lakefront property, the former SeaWorld Ohio site, for $5.3 million. Part of the funding came from the American Rescue Plan Act. The rest came from Aurora's general funds. And the city's commitment was clear from the start: no tax increases for residents. Mayor Ann Womer-Benjamin has been direct about the vision. The goal isn't just to clean up an eyesore, it's to build something the entire region can be proud of. A genuine community destination built around the lake that made this place famous in the first place. On October 23, 2025, Aurora broke ground on Phase 1A of Aurora Park at Geauga Lake. The first milestone in a multi-phase project that could take 5 to 8 years to fully realize. Phase 1. A construction began with underground utilities installation. Plans for this initial phase include refurbishing the old SeaWorld Gateway pavilions, renovating the existing boat dock, and creating open lakeside lawn areas by the end of summer 2026. Newly released renderings show a beach, walking trails, and plans to reuse the iconic wave pool, minus the waves, and to preserve several original SeaWorld structures, including the Welcome Plaza and the Triquarium. That building, which once held sharks and tropical fish in 3 massive 10,000-gallon tanks, may finally serve a purpose again, now as a restaurant overlooking the lake. Future phases include a swimming beach in the lake, a community pool, a bathhouse, kayak launches, and non-motorized boating. The full vision, the mayor says, will use every single acre of the 47-acre site. The new park is located less than an hour from both Cleveland and Akron airports, positioning it as a potential regional outdoor destination for Northeast Ohio. And for the first time since 2000, public access to Geauga Lake, the lake that started all of this, the lake that a generation of Ohio families grew up beside, is returning. As Mayor Womer-Benjamin put it at the 2026 State of the City address, not just any park, but a park that will eventually use every acre of the 47 to showcase the beauty of the area, provide recreational opportunities for everyone, open up the lake again to public enjoyment. Not Shamu, not water slides, not roller coasters or Batman branding. Just a lake, just open land, just the place where something remarkable once stood, given back to the people it always belonged to. Here's what SeaWorld Ohio actually was, underneath all the ownership transfers and legal clauses and attendance figures. It was the park where 1 million families from Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Chicago, and everywhere in between saw a killer whale for the first time in their lives. Where kids pressed their hands against the glass of the Triquarium and watched sharks glide silently past. Where teenagers watched a man on water skis soar off a ramp over a Midwestern lake on a hot July afternoon. For anyone who grew up near Cleveland in the 1970s, 80s, or 90s, missing a day at SeaWorld Ohio simply wasn't something that happened. Everyone went. Everyone had a Shamu memory. The park didn't fail because it wasn't loved. It failed because a single legal clause written in 1968 quietly decided its future before it even opened. It failed because the theme park industry evolved faster than a non-compete agreement could. It failed because every owner who came after Anheuser-Busch had different priorities, and none of them were make SeaWorld Ohio great. But the land is still there. The lake is still there. The Triquarium is still standing. And for the first time in a long time, something is being built instead of torn down. SeaWorld, Ohio lasted 30 years. It brought the ocean to landlocked families across the Midwest. It had shamu, pearl diving, a water skiing elephant, and a killer whale that once hung 30 feet in the air above a crowd of over 1,000 people. And then one day, the gates didn't open again. If you watched all the way to the end, drop a comment. Did you visit SeaWorld, Ohio, Geauga Lake, Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, or Wildwater Kingdom? I want to read your memories. And if this video meant something to you, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep telling stories like this one. I'll see you next time.